This is Theology Bits, a ministry of Central Lutheran Church, Eugene, Oregon. I'm Pastor Ben. This week, in our video, we will be beginning a new series on wilderness. And this is going to be something that Central Lutheran is doing throughout the season of Lent. And there will be 5 of these videos, all looking at wilderness as the main focus. Today, we begin with the joy and anxiety in wilderness. The whole series is called Journeying with God in our wilderness. And to understand it, we will be looking at Exodus chapters 15 to 20, when the people of Israel leave Egypt and they enter into the wilderness. But the point for us is going to be, how does that relate to us? What does this look like in our own lives? It begins exegetically, that is interpretively, meaning looking carefully at Exodus, and then leads us to what can we learn about the way we interact in our lives in 2024. So we begin in Exodus chapter 15, when the people of Israel finally leave Egypt. So really, to begin talking about wilderness, we have to start by recognizing what wilderness is compared and contrasted with. So there is Egypt, this place where the people had been enslaved for 400 years. And so the first association with Egypt is always slavery, enslavement. Yet, there's another aspect of Egypt that was simply part of the cultural context of what Egypt meant in the ancient Near East, which was harvest and plenty. Egypt was quite unusual in the ancient Near East because of its access to fresh water. The Nile would flood every year and would make the ground incredibly rich. And as a result, it was very rare that there was a famine in Egypt. There was famines all over the place, but frequently not in Egypt. So there were famines that would happen. It wasn't like everything was wonderful in Egypt, but it was just associated with that. So there's 2 things associated together, that with Egypt is where they were enslaved, but also where there was much harvest, where there was a land of plenty. And the last, of course, it's associated as enemy. If you're the people of Israel, they're the people enslaving you after all. Well, this is what they want to leave, and they do through the miraculous work of God and the leadership of Moses. They do leave, and the exodus out of Egypt, and they enter into the wilderness. Now, wilderness is going to be coded with some things that are in parallel, but in the opposite way. So first of all, in the wilderness, the one thing you could say about wilderness is you are now no longer enslaved. It is a space of freedom. So you see the one-to-one difference. However, it is not a place of harvest and plenty. It is a place of scarcity. We'll talk more about that. And the place is not somewhere where you actually want to be. And so, interestingly, this place can also be seen as kind of the enemy, the place that humans really don't live. And it really gives us, let's flesh out a little more what wilderness really is. But I just wanted here to point out, you see this parallel, and we're going to see that parallel every time. In the wilderness, they're very free, but they are living in scarcity. So there's always this back and forth. In their positive moments, they see the joy of freedom, but when they're struggling, they recall the plenty of Egypt. And that's not just random complaining. Instead, these were the associations held with these spaces. So, wilderness. What is wilderness? Well, it's really not a place. As if it's to say there are the places that have been developed by people and then the other places that have not yet been developed by people. This was a concept in the Old Testament, and the concept of wilderness is where humans cannot live, at least not for long. It is the place that it's not just scarce, maybe that's not even strong enough word. It's a place that does not sustain human life in any kind of meaningful way. And so we have a very striking moment when they leave Egypt to go into wilderness. They are going into a place where they believe they cannot live. What we're going to later understand is there actually are a lot of assets and treasures in wilderness, but not ones that they were accustomed to seeing and as treasures. Those that they could have socially, they were ready to use as those kind of assets. They were, if you were trying to make wilderness into a structure like what they had in Egypt, well, it's just not gonna work. It's a very different kind of system. And so, in the opening, we have two things happen almost simultaneously in Exodus chapter 15. The first is joy. Oh, the joy that comes. They have finally found freedom. And so we have song, we have dance, we have exaltation before God. They are finally away from the enslavement that they had been in for 400 years. And that lasts until they go 3 days' journey. And when they go of these 3 days, they find no water. And so what happens? Anxiety and fear in wilderness. There was joy that now we are beholden to no one. And now, oh my gosh, we're beholden to no one and there's no one else here. We're living in a place people can't live. We have no water. And what we're going to find in wilderness is the basic needs: water, food, shelter. These basic needs are going to come up again and again as what is it that we desperately need and we're anxious and fearful of. Very different than the kind of issues they had when they were in Egypt. For all the things you say about their enslavement in Egypt, we don't have the picture that they were starving. We do have the picture that they are now starving or dehydrated here in wilderness. And so wilderness becomes both a place for joy and a place for fear. That is going to be the dual role of wilderness. And we're going to find it's going to lead them as it is absolutely a place of trial, but a place of trial leads you to a place of identity. Who are we? What is it that we actually need? We're going to find a theology of necessity rather than a theology of abundance. And they find that maybe that has something to do with their own identity. If we could focus on what it is we really need and not try to create a theology of abundance and prosperity, maybe we'll have a better sense of who we are and who God is. And so as we lead into our thing of what is our wilderness for today, I'd like to think of that theology of necessity, not a theology of abundance and need. In fact, when they leave the wilderness, one of the biggest challenges they have is they struggle to remain with this theology of necessity, and they want to go into, it says need there, abundance and prosperity is what this should say. They lose that theology of necessity and lean into a theology of abundance and prosperity, sometimes well, sometimes poorly, but they often lose that focus. This is a focus for us to be asking ourselves, who are we? What is a theology of need for us? And thereby, is there a way for us to see blessings in a new way? There's a lot of blessings in the wilderness, but not as they were used to seeing. Do you have the fresh eyes to see the blessings that are there? This has been Theology Bits. I'm Pastor Ben.